Okay, hi everybody. We're back with another episode with Get Into It with Gila. I'm Gila Glassberg, registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor. And today I have Bri from Body Image with Bri. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Brianna Campos. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in the state of New Jersey. We just figured out that we don't live that far from each other.
Yeah.
And I am on Instagram as Body Image with Bri, and I am a body image coach.
Very cool. So I really wanted to bring you on because I personally follow you on Instagram and I love your page. I
Thank
always
you.
I almost always cry from all your honesty and your vulnerability. It's really something that I connect with, and I'm sure. I mean, you have so many followers, and we're all learning from you.
Thank you.
So could you just tell us a little bit about what is a body image coach?
Sure. So I guess that kind of combines a little bit with my story. So I a coach is somebody who helps you with is more goal oriented than a therapist, right? Whereas a therapist is like, hi, like, what do you want to talk about today? Or, like, let's process that. A coach is like, let's get you towards your goal, and what's stopping you? What are the hurdles that are coming up? So I kind of refer to myself as like an archaeologist. And I'm like, I don't know what we're going to find down there. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to process it with you, but let's uncover what some of those core beliefs are, and what are the hurdles that are stopping you from accepting the skin you're in. What is the hurdles of just making peace with your body? And so when I was undergoing my own body image issues and my own body image journey, I was doing a lot of the things that I was asking myself. And I kind of wish that I remember looking for like a body image group or something that I knew I didn't have to be alone in this journey. And so I decided I'm going to be that. I'm going to make that for people who are looking for that support on their body image journey.
Oh wow. So I guess they say that when the best invention is, what is it? Curiosity?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but it's like also from just lived experience too.
Right. So could you tell us a little bit about your own body image journey? Like how old were you? When did it start? Like
Sure.
what were the things that what got you to where you are today?
Yeah. So, um, so usually when I tell my story, I'll say, I've always lived life in a larger body. The more I look at pictures from my childhood, I wasn't really that much larger than people, but I remember I was made to feel like my body was a problem, that my size was concerning. And I remember the first time that I became negatively aware of my body by a professional was when I was 8 years old. I had gone to the doctor, and um, I always say I can't remember if I was naked, but I remember feeling naked. Like I remember feeling shame and embarrassment. And she was like, she said to my mom, she's too fat. You need to put her on a diet. And she said to me, you need to eat fruits and vegetables and exercise and not reward yourself with dessert. My doctor never once asked me what my current diet looked like. She never asked what my current exercise routine looked like. She just made an assumption about my body. And I remember being 8 years old, and I remember being in the bathtub, and I remember praying to God. I was like, okay, God, I need you to do two things for me. I need you to clean my room. I need you to make me smaller. I need you to make me thin. And he did neither of those two things. And um, I, I would say that probably was just the beginning of a journey of a lot of chronic dieting, a lot of different programs, every diet that there's ever been. If you've thought of it or heard of it, I've probably done it. And as expected by, weight science, I would start a diet, it would work for a little while, then it'd stop, then I'd go off of it, and I'd weight cycle. And I also, as I got older, wasn't until I was 25 that I found out that I have some other medical issues or medical concerns that could have contributed to my body size. And so this whole time I was being told that it was personal responsibility, that it was my fault that my body was the way it was, when it was really just genetics and a combination of weight cycling. And so I attribute the fact that I had a strong self-efficacy. Like, I was a very resilient kid, and I was very confident in other areas of my life, that I never developed an eating disorder. So my body image was like my Achilles heel.
Mhm.
I knew that I was a great friend. I knew that I was a good student. I knew that I was a good leader. It was just my body image. And so it was just this like shadow figure that I like didn't acknowledge. I was just like, oh yeah. And whenever I would see pictures of myself or somebody would make a comment, then I would be like, this is the time I'm gonna do it, right? So it wasn't until I was in grad school, and I had done a lot of, different therapy, a lot of different trying to acknowledge like the body image stuff. But really it was more of like, this is a problem, but I'm going to fix it. And every time I would go to a therapist and say, but I'm going to do this, I would get met with like, congratulations. Like, I'm going to do this diet. Wow. Well, it sounds like I have a really good handle on it. I'm going to, do this. Or I'm gonna, when I was 19, I opted to get the lap band surgery, the weight loss surgery. And again, met with praise and adoration of like, congratulations. I was 19, right, when I'm having this invasive surgery. And right, now I'm like, oh, I can't even, because in my family's mind, in my doctor's mind, the worst thing I could be was fat. And I use fat in a reclaimed way. I don't use it in a negative way. And so it was years after I was having complications from the lap band surgery, and I wanted to get it removed. And I remember the doctor who wanted to remove it wanted to do another surgery. And I was not yet aligned with health at every size. And I was like, no, like, I have done research on this, and I know that it is not a long-term solution. Plus, I don't believe my food is the reason. Like, it is not because I am excessively eating. And the doctor wasn't hearing me. So they thankfully removed the band. But I remember being like, nobody's listening to me when I'm saying, I don't think that my weight is being caused by overeating, and a lack of movement. And so when I I had started at the same time, simultaneously, I was in therapy for my program for counseling. And I remember talking to my therapist about dating, and somehow it led to body image. And I was like, those two have nothing to do with each other. They did. And I started realizing a lot of these core beliefs that I held around body image that I would never hold for anyone else, that I didn't actually believe were true, but I believed they were true for me. So for instance, I believed no one will love me if I am in a large body. Like, my large body is not sexy or appealing. It is disgusting, and no one's going to want me. And I remember once, it was like I pulled back a carpet. Once you know what's under there, you can't unsee it. And so I really set out on this journey of how do I make peace with my body image. And I now know I probably would have diagnosed myself with body dysmorphia because I felt hopeless. Like, I felt like unless my body changes, there's going to be no hope in changing. Like, there's no hope in changing the beliefs. And it's not true, because I did a lot of the work that I do with my clients. I did a lot of changing the way that I spoke to myself, changing my self-talk. I use this example of, you can't play two tracks at once. So you can't play a body positive message if you're not also stopping the negative, hateful message. So just even these like underlying thoughts of like, he's not going to like you for your body, or like, and just calling them out and recognizing and making space for them, rather than just putting them down and being like, that's stupid, of why is this something I really believe? And I just did a live not too long ago, or I think I did it in my stories and then I put it in my IGTVs of like my 10 tips of how I, venture to body image. Like I'm not hiding it from anyone. I want to share it with the world because I want everyone to experience this. But I think people are waiting for like, they want like a pill, like and bottle up and be like, give it to me, give me this technique. It's time. It's a lot of time. Like if you think about how much time. So I was 8 years old when I started, and I'm not good at fast math, but I was 8 years old when I first realized my body was wrong. And I was, let's say I was 25, 26 when I realized, wait a second, my body's not wrong, right? That's not right. From 8 to 25, that is how many years I have played this message of your body is wrong, your body is wrong, your body is wrong. So now we're doing this unlearning. We call this thing, I know I'm talking a lot.
No.
We know, we call it in counseling neuroplasticity, right? Where our thought process and our behaviors, they're linked together. And with neuroplasticity is we want to change the behavior we change the thought process by changing the behavior. So if the first thought is I'm uncomfortable with my body, and your behavior is to I'm going to diet, I'm going to change my body, that is just the pattern that has been built. If we can change the behavior to, hey, let's dive into this, let's lean into the discomfort, eventually you make a new pattern where you no longer, that's not your go-to. So long story short, I worked at a eating disorder recovery center, and I had never heard of any of like health at every size, intuitive eating. There was a dietitian. I went to 3 different locations for this program as a therapist, and it was at the last program, probably within like the last day or so. The dietitian said to me, she was like, I feel like you would really like this podcast. And it was Christy Harrison's podcast, Food Psych.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard of health at every size and intuitive eating, that was it for me. I had already done all of this work that when I heard it, I was like, yeah, this is it. This makes sense. And it was very shortly after that where I made my page, and the rest is a love story.
That's a great story. I love it. So I do have a question. I have a bunch of questions. When you became a therapist, was your goal to work with people with their body image, or not even? That was your goal.
Yeah.
Because you had done
I had always had a passion for body image. And I had run body image groups, like especially at the different locations that I was at. But it always felt like something was missing. Like, especially when it came to, like, I knew that, right, my body image had like nothing to do with my body. And I knew, but like when the question of like health came up, right, I was always like, yeah, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you about that, because I am a dietitian, and so many people say like, but what if you're like, you really need to lose weight? Or like with your case, the doctor, like you feel like you can't really like fight with a doctor. You don't really, like, the doctor knows best, right? So how do you navigate that with yourself or with your clients, when I have so many clients, even in the last few weeks, them telling me like the doctor's really recommending like the weight loss surgery, and I'm like, oh gosh,
Well, first, I mean, I just have so much empathy, and that's really hard. And you have to remember that, again, it's like technology. We were talking about how the technology wasn't working before. It has its benefits, and modern medicine, like there's so many benefits to modern medicine. But I do think that, right, doctors push weight loss surgeries. I don't think that they do it for finances, right? But they're covered. Most weight loss surgeries are covered financially. And so I don't even want to get down that rabbit hole. My question would be is, right, if weight is not a behavior, right? If weight is a symptom, what would you say to somebody in a smaller body? Right? So even for instance, I think that what we do a lot of the time is we scapegoat our bodies, right? Our bodies are the problem. And again, that is that belief system. It's like being in a cult, right? I imagine. I've never been in a cult. But where you have just learned something, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, wait a second, is that even right? I don't even know. So I like, I'll give you an example from my personal life. Since being in quarantine, because this is being recorded in the spring of summer of 2020, we've been in quarantine for several days now, and I've done all of my work via telehealth, right? And my knee has started hurting me. And of course, the first thought is because of my body size. Right, that's the first thought. And what we call that is scapegoating our body, right? So when we talk about scapegoating in a clinical sense, it's when we put all of the problems on something or someone, and it doesn't actually allow us to look at, well, what's the problem? So I thought, okay, well, what advice would I give to somebody who's in a smaller body? And so the first thing I asked was, well, what's changed, right? What's changed in the last couple of days or weeks that could possibly explain why I'm having knee pain? And I sit at this desk in this little corner for a significant amount of hours a day. I've stopped moving. I used to formally exercise, and I just don't have the bandwidth or the emotional capacity or any of I was like, I can't. And I've given myself permission to pause. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe sitting all day is part of the problem. And I found a couple of things that I could do to help with knee pain relief that have nothing to do with my body size. Like, for instance, one of them, and I'm not like, this can't be a replacement for medical advice, but it's just sitting with my legs straight out rather than sitting with them with feet flat, like letting them sit straight out so that you can have an opportunity to flex and point your toes. I have a couple of stretches that I do at night now and in the morning. And within 2 days, it has made a significant difference in my pain. And how quick and easy would it have been to be like, it's my body and I'm going to go on a diet. I think one of the things too is going on a diet, or, thinking about going on a diet, fills us with this inflation. I can't think of the word, but we just get this like, yes, and then I'm going to fix my problem. And then we start to fairy tale ending. And then I'm going to get to do this, that, and then. And so we spiral from this belief system of, I'm going to fix all my problems. And so, yeah, I kind of going back to your question though, if a medical professional is really pushing for weight loss surgery, I really think it probably is time for another doctor. And the other thing is, if they are working with you, that they can ask you to recommend. I had my doctor call and say to my doctor that I am not interested in weight loss, and that they need to not weigh me unless absolutely medically necessary. And she knows that I work with this dietitian, and she hasn't weighed me in over 2 years. So
that's great. So that's really learning to be like the advocate for yourself and also for your patients. Like, I recently decided to call like certain doctors and try to educate them on what's going on, because otherwise they just don't know.
And it's not even, you don't even like, so even trying to educate them on health at every size and food, that's not even, but like, if I had an eating disorder, my dietitian, I used to call on behalf of people all the time of like, they have an eating disorder, weighing them is really triggering. Can you please not, unless medically necessary? Yeah. So and most times they're really amenable to it. So
right. I also want to say something about let's say you hadn't done all this work and you had this knee pain, and then you would automatically scapegoat your body, like you were saying before, and then a lot of people, like, you fix the problem, like, okay, let me stretch my knees, let me figure out what to do. But so many people, because they don't think like that, or they haven't been trained to think like that, they just don't do anything. And then that's why they don't get the medical care that they need, because maybe they're afraid to go to the doctor, or they're afraid to be fat shamed or body shamed. And it's really sad. It's really unfortunate. It is sad. Yeah.
It's so disheartening. And I stayed away from the doctor for years because I was like, I don't want another lecture. Like, I already know that I'm in a large body. I don't need you to tell me that I'm doing it wrong. And that sucks. That absolutely sucks. And I was tired all the time, and I was exhausted. And I have a thyroid issue, I was like, I didn't know that I needed to be on medication, right? And I avoided going to the doctor because I was afraid of that. And that's a very real thing. And that is what we would call, you know, weight stigma. And it's truly rooted in fat phobia, which if anybody's listening to this, are like, what's that? It's the sense that we believe that people in larger bodies, that it's like wrong to be in a larger body, right? That, you know, that's not how we were meant to be. And when I explain body image to kids, I use this example of, let's look at fruit, right? Fruit comes in all shapes and sizes. Some has skin, some has fuzz, some have seeds, some don't, right? They're all different. We would never expect a watermelon to look like a banana.
Right.
Right? And why? Because of genetics, right? Like that's just how it is. A watermelon is large and round, and a banana is lean and thin, and they're both great fruits. Like it's just diversity of size.
I love that.
And so yeah, and for kids it's a lot easier. There's so many things you could do that with. You could do it with trees or pumpkins, or right? And there's not one right way to be a pumpkin. There's not one right tree. There's a lot of different diversity. And so it's definitely diet culture. So one of the things that we talk a lot about is in the health at every size and intuitive eating world, is we talk about diet culture and how they utilize, they work on, it's a $71 billion industry based off of the premise that whatever they're selling you is going to fail, right? The weight science, there is no adequate weight science that proves that for 95% of the people that it's going to be sustainable for more than 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. And so, right, so they are profiting off of that it's going to work for 3 to 5 years. There's going to be this inflation with people, like it's the only product that has a 95% failure rate. And people are like, I'm going to go back and get it, right? I'm going to do it again.
Right.
And my thought is because it's really tied to self-esteem. So what we in our society, when people lose weight, we congratulate them. We talk about their body. We praise them. It is all about like, oh, they have succeeded. Like they've done it. We're so proud of them. So in my mind, the opposite is then failure. When your body gets bigger, you feel like you failed. And yeah, and I that is a story that I think society tells us. It's not true, right? So I know that there are a lot of A-list celebrities who are talking about how much weight they've lost. Okay, let's see what happens in 5 years from now. Like, okay, like she's lost weight now, but is it sustainable? And excuse me, at the end of the day, her work is not better because of her body size. She's still an amazing singer. Yeah. And so yeah, I do think that it's diet culture profits off of our continuing to give their money to them. And they know that people, the worst thing in the world is for people to be fat. There's a study out there that said, I'm gonna get it wrong. I want to say it was like upwards of 80% of 10-year-old girls in a study said they were more afraid of becoming fat than they were of getting cancer, their parents dying, both of their parents dying, or of us going to war.
Oh God.
I see, and like you had a visceral reaction when that happened. Talk to me. What happened for you?
It's just so horrible that like we've equated like being fat with like the worst possible thing, and then in 10-year-old girls, like I have a 7-year-old daughter, like I don't ever want her to think like her body's better if she's smaller, or her body's worse if she's bigger, or that she would think that about other people. Like it's just so sad, because I know for myself, even I'll just be like completely honest, like when I started intuitive eating, because I was already working as a dietitian, I definitely, I think, had that underlying belief, like, okay, I'm going to do intuitive eating and I'll lose weight. Even though intuitive eating is not about weight loss. And I know a lot of my clients struggle with that. And I think that I actually gained weight when I started doing intuitive eating. And I actually also started doing formal exercise at the same time. And I was like, I can't believe this. Like, who's going to want to work with me? Like, I gained weight, or like, I'm not as thin as other dietitians, you know? And there was a lot of like digging, like the extra digging, like, where like I also have bought into the belief system that thinner is better and thinner is more beautiful. And now that I've worked on that part, and it's still hard, you know, it's still a struggle because I'm a human and I live in this world, but like I feel a lot of like freedom, like, and I feel a lot of like, you know, the people who I follow on Instagram, some are in larger bodies, some are in smaller bodies, but like I just learned so much from you guys, like that you do this hard work, and that even if you are in a larger body, or even like for me, I struggle with it because I'm not like a size 2 and I'm a dietitian. Like I'm showing up because this is really important work and we need to break this stigma.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when I was first trying to find professionals, like I was looking at all like the Haze and the intuitive eating, I realized that there weren't a lot of professionals in larger bodies talking. Like it was a lot of thin white women talking. And I'm like, okay, but it's easy for you to say it's okay for you to love your body, but how, like, what about me? And this is the other thing too, is that I encourage all of my you know, colleagues who are in more societally acceptable bodies, that I needed them to say the message because my fat phobia was so rampant within myself that I needed someone to say it. I needed someone to be like, I remember when I listened to Chrissy Harrison's podcast and it was an episode on emotional eating, and I was like prepared to be like, and they're going to say once again that like, you know, it's my fault. And it was Judith Math, and she was Matz, and she was like, she said something like, you know, I don't even think emotional eating is a thing. Like all emotional eating is emotional. And I was like, oh, whoa, what? Or like we think it as a bad thing. And I was like, oh, I've never heard this before. So I needed that permission piece to really make space and allow for, just to allow for myself to be able to make peace with my body. But it is hard. Nobody's going to tell you that this work is not hard, but I can tell you, being in a larger body, really learning to make peace with my body. Like, I think people think I lie. Like, I think people think I'm lying. And here's the thing, is it's not that I love all of the parts of my body, right? Like, I walked past my mirror the other day at an unflattering angle, and I was like, ew, right? I'm human, but I caught it when it happened, and I was like, what just happened there? Like, why did you do that? And really just catching those thoughts in the moment, and really just kind of digging in and leaning in to that self-talk and the narrative that I'm playing in my head, rather than just being like, oh yeah, like, all right, or I'm going to fix it, I'm going to go on a diet. I think that when you learn how to love without condition, right? Like, it's not, I'm going to love my body when it's smaller. I'm going to love my body when I don't have like this pocket here, or these problem areas go away, or I'm going to love my body when I can fix my cellulite. When we can change that, then the definition of body love changes. And so, yeah, I love my body 10 out of 10. That does not mean that I am in love with all of the parts of my body all of the time. It doesn't mean that my body doesn't also cause me discomfort at times. But yeah, at the end of the day, and the biggest tool I can give to people is really honing in on how you talk to yourself, because that's been the biggest change. And I'm like, if I wouldn't talk to anybody that I love in the way that I'm talking to my body right now, probably not a good thing to be saying to my body.
Do you have other tools? Like, I know that I've worked a lot on the self-talk, and I work with my therapist also on self-talk, but like we've had this conversation before, me and my therapist, like sometimes you can't access it. You can't, like, you're having too much of a hard time to access your self-talk or access changing it. It's like too powerful.
Mm-hmm. I think that sometimes it goes so unnoticed, like that it's just sort of like innate. And so like when people work with me, we'll do different like body image exposures when they feel ready. So one of the tools that I'll use with my client is I will have them scale body image discomfort on a scale of 1 to 10. So I'll say, I want you to keep track of what happened. And so I'll give you an example from myself. I remember the first time I was, practicing intuitive eating. I had full permission from my dietitian and myself. I was like, I'm going to go get a bagel. I love bagels. I'm from North Jersey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm walking into the bagel store, I felt so much guilt, so much shame. I was so activated in my body. On a scale of 1 to 10, it was probably like an 8 out of 10. And I had to just observe that and be like, okay, you're not going to rob the bagel store. You're not going to murder anyone in the bagel store. You're just getting a bagel. So why do you feel like a criminal? Why does this feel so shamey and guilty? And I just leaned into that. And when it's activated, it's a lot easier than when it's not activated. But the more you lean into when it's activated, the more when it's like less, you'll be like, ooh, that was like a subtle thought. So like even my mirror thought the other day, it was insignificant. It was probably like a 1 or 1 or a 2 where I was just like, ugh. And so now I can identify it. I'm like, okay, cool. What can we do to help with that? When it's activated. So in that store, in the moment when I was in the bagel store and I was like, okay, like, let's just lean in right now. What is the worst? Like, what's the story you're telling yourself? And the story I was telling myself is, see, this is why you're fat. And I've heard, several people say, and so I've started doing this, is really identifying that inner critic in your voice and naming him or her and like separating it from yourself. Because I believe we have true values, right? And you have like your true you. And then you have this inner critic who I have had some who describe it like a mean girl who's like, no, that doesn't look good on you. Or, you know what I mean? And so mine was a little bit of a mean girl in that moment. It was like, see, this is why you're fat.
Mm-hmm.
And the person in front of me was in a smaller body. The people in the back were in different size bodies. And I was like, wait a second. I tell girls all the time in my eating disorder clinic that body size is not implicit because of food, right? Like it doesn't change because of food or one food, right? One time. And it's just bread, right? It's just a bagel, right? And if that's not true for him, how is it true for you? And really recognizing that, wow, that was the belief system, is that if I eat this food, it's going to change my body size. And so now I can eat bagels free will. Now bagels, I'm like, am I in the mood for a bagel? Yeah, I'm going to have a bagel. And it's so freeing and it's amazing. And I couldn't be happier. And so, yeah, I think another tool would be really just highlighting how activated it becomes for you. Because then when it's these higher activations, like 10 or like lower, so when I work with coaching clients, if it's higher than a 5, I don't touch it because I'm not your therapist. I can't do that with you. So I like to stick around like still like a 5. I think 5 is still activated enough, but it's not traumatizing you. And I would encourage you, like with a Hazel-aligned therapist or whatever, to lean into that a little bit more of, I wonder why that's so activated. And truly it's because of your belief systems around it, right? What is the story you're telling yourself?
So I love that. And I also think that that's like, I guess something that I speak about a lot, which is like, a lot of us were raised that like our emotions are bad, like strong emotions are bad, like anger or shame, jealousy, whatever. And you're basically saying like that's your, like I say, emotions get us into motion, or they're our smoke alarm. Like you're using that as a tool. Like what is this telling me? What am I believing?
Yes, it's exactly like with an intuitive eating when she says, when Evelyn Tribole talks about, you're like, oh shoot, I'm gonna screw this up. She talks about like the different voices. So you're like nutrition informant,
right,
where it's like, do you know how many calories are in a bagel?
right,
Not helpful.
right.
How can we switch the hat from judgment to curiosity? So
right.
even in that moment when I was filled with shame walking past the mirror, or not even filled with shame, but just like talked negatively to myself, I was like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And can I connect to that? What's happening for me that this is being filled within me right now?
Right. I remember, I don't know, do you follow Rachel Tuckman?
Do I follow who?
Rachel Tuckman. She's also a therapist, and she talks a lot about anti-diet,
I don't
and
think so.
she's really great.
I
So
don't.
we've done some like talks together, and she always says
Nice.
this she always says it to the crowd, like, you ever have like a day where you try on an outfit and you're like, oh, I look really good, and then the next day you try on the same outfit and you're like, this looks horrible on me, I look disgusting, look at my body, and it's just, what's going on? Like, what happened to you that day that affected your self-esteem?
Right. Why did it change so quickly? And the truth is like, some days you're going to be feeling yourself and other days you're not. That's a place people hide though too, right? They're like, I don't think I have a body image issue because there are some days that I think I look good.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where some days I'm like, oh, okay, how are you doing? That's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the issue. I mean, I think we have to level that at some point. We all have some body image issues. Like, so if somebody tells me I have no issues with my body at all, that's a little suspicious to me.
Do you think
because
everyone has issues with their body?
because I think our bodies are like relationships. It would be like you saying, I have no problems with my husband ever. We got married and then it was a love story ever since. We've never fought. We've never had any problems.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, that's not true.
But nobody would expect that either. Nobody would be like, oh wow, like that's the goal. They'd be like, are you sure?
Right.
And that's the thing, is it's a relationship with your body. Your body, Anna Sweeney, she's a dietitian on Instagram. She says that our relationship with our body is the longest one we're ever gonna have.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think it's not about not feeling any discomfort in your body, which is not even realistic, right?
Right.
But of when it happens, how do you choose to move through it?
Right. And you also mentioned before that, like, when you were as a child, you were very resilient and that you had like high self-esteem. What do you like? I actually interviewed somebody else, and she was bullied as a child and she said she was bullied for her weight, and I said, how did you, she said, I always had self-confidence and my mother always made sure we had other hobbies. And I was like, wow, like, that's amazing. I know, like, for me, if I was bullied, like, I wouldn't be able to take that. Like, I'm way too sensitive and I get hurt way too easily, very easily, not way too easily. But how do you, like, what would you attribute your confidence to?
So I teach introduction to eating disorders at a small college in Spark Hill, New York. And I remember when I was preparing for my course, really struggling with this, because I'm like, I literally have all of the markers for somebody who, quote unquote, should have developed an eating disorder. And the only thing I can attribute it to was having a safe attachment growing up to a parent, and to loved ones, right? Feeling that safe connection to people. And also having, right, before I was being bullied, had confidence in getting involved in activities. Now, I was a very outgoing kid. I imagine it might be harder for a kid who's shyer, but I was always like, I didn't shut up like now. Like, I love to talk. I love to hear myself talk. My mom would always joke that she would cut me off at like 15 questions, because otherwise I would just keep going. She was like, okay, this is the last one. So yeah, and so I think it's hard, but I think even more so for parents, it's going to be really important to not only educate yourself, but for your kids.
Yeah.
And how do we have conversations about body image? So if you have a kid who's shy and reserved and doesn't really, doesn't know, like, doesn't have like a lot of friends, or right, how do we have this conversation? And I really think if you can just take an approach of neutrality towards bodies, like, yeah, some bodies are big, some bodies are small, just like fruit, right, just like trees, will that help shape your children's relationship to their own body. But even more so than having these conversations is parents leaning in and doing their own work. It's doing the body image work yourself. That if you would not prescribe what you're doing or thinking to your child, if you would throw down before somebody spoke to your child that way, then you have to advocate for yourself. You have to be that loving, kind parent to yourself first, which is another technique that I use with clients is, well, if you have your inner critic, what would a loving parent say?
Right. I actually wrote about this on Mother's Day because I realized on Mother's Day, I was thinking what to write. And I was thinking that most of my clients actually have some sort of, not just issues with their parents, with their mother, but like some sort of self-esteem related to criticism from their mothers, maybe even having to do with their body image. And it's this work, a lot of this work is really reparenting yourself. And that was a foreign concept to me until recently, but it's very empowering because a lot of people blame their parents, and that what could you do with that? You can't do anything. You can't change the past, you can't change your parents, but you can change your voices in your head, and that's really empowering.
Yeah. And I would say from a therapeutic standpoint, right, we all have parent wounds, right? That's a very real thing. And therapy and trauma therapy would be a great place to go to process some of those deeper wounds. We cannot change our parents, but I think that even going back into those moments as a kid, figuring out what did you need and what would have what was it that you needed in those moments. And I'm like, I think I'm a pretty cool therapist. I'm not like super into like so we call it Gestalt therapy of like, oh, let's do this, what do they call it? Oh shoot, I'm losing the term right. It's like a open chair. Shoot, I can't think of it right now. But it's like where you're talking to a younger version of yourself. But that can be super powerful when done well, and not in like a corny sense, right? It can be really powerful of figuring out what your inner child needed and how to restore that moving forward. But that's definitely therapy work, and not something that you or I can even, touch on as, coaches and as a dietitian. But the truly giving space to the child that was hurt. So when I think about my 8-year-old self, what I needed was for somebody to be like, hold up, probably with a lot of expletives, like, don't ever talk to my kid that way. You have no, and like really just come for the doctor in that moment. I also always preface that I believe that my parents did the best that they could with the knowledge that was given to them. And so I don't hold my parents at fault, because I know that they were only doing the best that they could. Right. So it is that kind of giving like a, not a pass, but just like, all right, they did the best they could, and I'm going to do better for the next generation.
Yeah, when our parents were raising us, there wasn't a lot of this education on intuitive eating, health at every size. It wasn't even like a thing. So so what you're doing, like showing off on Instagram, and I've learned so much from you and other health at every size, intuitive eating accounts. I don't know, like I was also a little bit misinformed. I went to school for many years to become a dietitian, and I never heard once about intuitive eating or health at every size.
Right. Absolutely.
So you guys are really like trailing the way.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so do you want to leave our listeners with anything else?
Yeah. So this has sort of just been on my mind recently, but no matter where you are in this journey, it's okay, right? You don't need to be anywhere else. It doesn't matter where, I am, or, anyone else in your life is. You're on your own journey, you're on your own path, and you're doing the best you can.
I love that. Okay, I actually did want to ask you one more question if you're
Go for it.
I saw the other day on your Instagram that somebody wrote you like such an awful, horrible DM, and I know they call that like a troll. I've never been trolled. I'm not that cool. I don't have that many followers, but but you presented it to everyone, and you let yourself feel whatever you felt. But do you mind sharing like how you were able, like you weren't broken, like you said, like it hurt, but like you understood that that person was struggling or whatever. If you could talk about that for like a minute.
Sure. And then even before I talk about that, I'll talk about, oh gosh, it probably was, man, 2013, 2014. I was on a dating site, and I got a pretty nasty troll on a dating site, right? So a troll on the internet, it's just somebody who is, they're not looking to support you or follow you. Or so on this dating site, this person literally engaged me just so that they could bring me down. And they made a comment about my body size, and then like I was so flabbergasted, because I'm like, you literally had to choose to engage me. Like, you literally had to choose, I want to connect with you just so you could bring me down. And I remember when that happened, I remember being so filled with shame. And I remember feeling the shame in my chest, in my throat. Like, I for those that are listening, I'm like grabbing right by my throat, because I remember this burning feeling. And I remember being so hurt. And I went for a walk, and I just sort of engaged in that self-talk of like, okay, why does this hurt so much? And in 2014, it hurt so much because I was like, I feel like I have to prove myself. And like, this is why, right? This is, moments like this are why I feel like I need to prove myself, because people make assumptions about me because of my body size, and it really hurts. And it probably disrupted me for about a day, right? Like, it was about a day. And I ended up sharing it online, because I was like, people tell me all the time, like, oh, fat shaming isn't a thing. And I was like, it is a thing. I just want to show you, this is how, like, being in a larger body, this is something that I experience. Like, I will experience, and you might never. And I got so many people of my friends, this was before I had a page, who were just like, oh my gosh, this person is horrible, you're beautiful, don't worry. And I remember that wasn't helpful, because I was like, I mean, I knew they were trying to help, but I was like, he didn't call me ugly, he called me fat. Now fast forward to 2020, and I wake up to this horrific troll. And again, so different being not on a dating site and it being just like on the internet, because I get trolls constantly. I think I wrote on my post, I get so much love on my page, so much love and support. Then far less, I'll get people who are like dissenting, but like want to learn, or maybe are trying to learn. And even less, I will get trolls. Actually, more than I get trolls are people who are like fetishizing my body. So, yeah, so I saw it, and it stung, and I was like, "Ooh, that's really uncalled for." And now that I look at it, right, when I was in 2014 versus 2020, I put so much effort into, well, what are other people going to think about me? And I've done so much work since then till now that I care less what other people think about me. Like, yes, it still hurts. It just matters way less. Like, in 2014, I had so many of my friends saying, I love you, you're amazing, it's him, not you. And I was like, I know this, but why does it still hurt? And what I realized is because I was afraid to show up in the world, because I'm like, well, this is my fears, that this is what people are going to think. And now in 2020, it's like, I know people are going to think this, but I don't care because my life is so full. I believe vehemently what I stand for, and I'm not going to let one person and their opinion take that from me. And so it was probably the span of like maybe an hour where I had reached out to two friends. I was like, this is what I woke up to this morning. And they're Instagram friends as well. And both therapists. And they just kind of talked me through it. And then they were like, so what do you like, what are you going to do now? And I was like, I kind of want to share it. And they were like, you have a right to share it. You don't have to, but you can. And I chose to share because, one, I wanted to show people that this is what I experience. Like, I get those messages at least once a month. Like that definitely happens. Maybe not to that severity. And I think too, they had brought up some other things that maybe if they hadn't, I don't know if I would have been so like alarmed by it, but it was a very cruel message, and it's abusive, right? But I am so self-assured, right, that my worth and value does not come from my body. As a therapist, I know that somebody, like we say this thing, hurt people, right? And I believe, and I've seen this going around too, healed people heal people. So that's why I do what I do, right? And so I'm not saying that didn't hurt, right? But it's like if somebody purposely steps on your toe, it hurts, but it didn't break it. Like I'm like, well, I was rude,
Right.
but I'm okay. And that's because whereas before I was like, oh my God, like it was like a barefoot. And I'm like, oh my God, is everyone gonna like my foot? Is everyone gonna like my foot? Now I'm like, I don't care if you like my foot.
Right.
I like my foot.
You have perspective on like I'm helping so many people through my work, and just because one person decides to do something rude, that has nothing to do with me.
I was overwhelmed. I was literally overwhelmed by the love that I received from people. I couldn't even, I was like, this is not what I imagined at all. But I was grateful. And yeah. And again, right. So in my body image, and this is a great little tidbit too. It's not like with weight loss, right, where you're like, I'm seeing progress all of this time, and it's like, yes, and then it stops. You don't know when you have progress until you live the experience again. So I'll give you another short example. I remember when my leaning in, right, I remember flying on an airplane, and I remember being filled with shame, like just so much shame about getting on the airplane and being like, why are you feeling so much shame? And I sat on the airplane and I leaned into it, and I was realizing that I was feeling shame because I was worried that I was taking up too much space, that I was going to be in this person's space, and that what were they thinking about me? And, you know, are they thinking what that mean troll said to me on the internet? Like, right, whatever the case may be. And so I sat and I journaled, which is a great resource. Journaling, I have some journal prompts on my page under my highlights if people want to lean into that. But after that, like I can fly in an airplane now and I don't get filled with shame because it's uncomfortable and it's separating out the shame from the discomfort. So now I'm like, oh, this isn't the most comfortable thing. I wish they had more options, all of the above. But at the end of the day, it's separating out the shame from the discomfort or the pain or the emotion.
And that's also like what you were talking about before about like scapegoating your body. Like if you feel uncomfortable on a plane, that might not have anything to do with like, it's not your fault or it's not your body's fault. It just is what it is, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. I learned so much, and I'll put like all your information in the show notes and your website, and yeah, just thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a great day. Bye.